Welcome to the True Talk Podcast. Here's your host, Jenna.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of True Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Jenna. And today I have someone who I met recently last September. So today I have Erin Comfortini with me on the podcast. She is the mastermind of budgeting in your 20s. She created, well, no, come on. You created this budget template that I downloaded. I got off her stand store, and it helps you stay organized with budgeting. I mean, what girl in her 20s doesn't have a problem with overspending and shopping and all that kind of stuff? So, honestly, Erin is out here saving lives. But guys, Erin is so fun to be around. I love the content that she puts out, and she's honestly been like a huge inspiration for me with starting my podcast and diving more into my social media pages and stuff. So I'm just so excited to have her on the show today. We're going to get into some finance topics, some just life topics, but enjoy the show for now. So, Erin, welcome to True Talk Podcast and welcome to the True Crew. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I wouldn't call myself like the master of budgeting.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. I've named you. I baptized you that.
Yeah, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Of course. So, Erin, if you can give the listeners and viewers just a background of, and guys, real quick, I'm going to put her social handles in the show notes, so make sure to go follow her. She gives like this short little summary that she's a 25-year-old, almost 25-year-old, living in Pittsburgh, and this is what she spends in a week, this is what she spends in a month. So can you give them a little background of who you are, what you do, how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. So I think a good place to start is, I guess, how I got interested in the whole personal finance thing to begin with, because I've been doing this on social media for almost 3 years now, which is like kind of crazy to me. I don't feel like it's been that long, but I just kind of got into social media because personal finance was a topic that I was super interested in. And I realized that not enough young women, like early adults, just graduating from college, starting their first full-time job, not enough people had that financial literacy to kind of start their career on a good foot with their finances and truly build wealth for themselves in their 20s. So that's kind of where like the social media thing came in. But I guess kind of backing it up to how I even got interested in personal finance to begin with, it's so funny to hear me called like the budgeting girl and stuff now, because obviously that is what I'm known for. Like the budget template that Jenna was referring to, it's been downloaded.
The budget guru. You're the budget guru.
But it's so funny to hear that, because I am inherently not like, I'm not a budgeting girl. I'm not a frugal girl. I never wanted to be like a frugal kind of like penny pincher, anything like that.
Yeah.
My kind of love for personal finance and how all of this came to be was more so on the investing side and like the building wealth and all of that. That's kind of where it started. So to back up, I was not always inherently good with my money. I was just like any other kind of like teenage girl growing up, spent all of their money shopping and going out to eat with their friends and all of the normal teenage girl things. But when I was around 19 years old, back in college, my boyfriend at the time was a financial advisor, and he was super interested, obviously because of what he did for work. He was super interested in all of the personal finance stuff, specifically around investing, real estate investing, early retirement. He was like very, very into it. And I remember really early on in our relationship, he made a comment to me about how how his goal was to retire at 40. And here I am. I'm like 19 years old. My parents are in their 60s, still working. I always just kind of thought of retirement as like you work until you're super old and then one day you get to retire and like Social Security helps you and all of that. Like that is the viewpoint that I've always had growing up. I grew up in a very typical kind of like middle class family. My parents work normal middle class jobs and that's kind of all I knew. And then he told me that he was going to retire at 40. I was like, yeah, okay, like sure you are.
Keep dreaming, buddy.
But the more he talked to me about it and kind of like told me where his thinking was coming from, he introduced me to this entire community of people, this large community of people called the FIRE community, which FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. And essentially it's an entire community of people who live their lives in such a way where they either are frugal enough so they can invest a lot of money or they increase their income so that they can invest a lot of money. And the premise is just you invest enough early on to where you get to a point mid in your career where you have enough money in your investment portfolio to either completely sustain the rest of your life or to not have to continue to invest by the time you get to retirement. You have enough money in your retirement account. So he's like introducing all of this stuff to me and I'm 19 and I really don't know anything. I just got back from studying abroad for a semester in Europe and blew all of my money. I blew all of my money on like Aperol spritzes for a semester. I had no money to my name.
Girl, hold up, because you know for a fact that was worth it. That was 100% worth every single penny spent on an espresso or an Aperol spritz.
But I came back and I had no money and I wasn't good at being responsible with my money. All I knew was I earned money and then I spend it on a bunch of clothes or going out to the bar with my friends on the weekend. And he starts introducing me to all of these concepts. And I honestly got so into it. Like he would send me all of the podcasts that he was listening to and the books that he was reading. And I just kind of like became obsessed with it like he was. So really, I spent the last couple of years of college listening to a bunch of personal finance podcasts, reading a bunch of books, starting to save money, starting to invest money. He helped me like open my Roth IRA. Like honestly, I do credit a lot to him, like nice guy, whatever. But so I graduate from college and I'm in a pretty good place with my finances, but I really didn't have a big like why to continue like growing it from there until I started my first full-time job out of college. Start my job, I thought it was my dream job. It was a super prestigious job to get into. I was working at a government agency as a bank examiner and thought that this was going to be my dream job. Get in there, hate my first full-time job so much.
Isn't that terrible? Like it's just everything you thought you knew just plummets and you're like
I glamorized this job so much. I was like, I'm going to be traveling for work. I'm going to be wearing suits every day. I bought all of these suits with like the pointy-toed heels and the work toe. And I just like felt so cool until I actually had to do that for more than 2 weeks. And I was like, oh my God.
Felt the same way.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to do this for the next 40 years. And it kind of brought me back to like all of the things that I was teaching myself in college, how to invest and early retirement and all of these things. And I'm like, okay, so if I can invest enough money, maybe that means that I don't need to work this crappy job, this shitty job until I'm 65. So I just kind of like got really into it. And I've always been a pretty ambitious person. I've always had multiple things going on. So at night, like after working my job during the day, at night, I would come home and I would kind of like research ways to make money or like businesses to start. I thought that before I started on social media, I thought I was going to be like a blogger or something like that, just because I was looking for kind of a passion project that could potentially turn into a business. And social media ended up being the thing that I stuck with.
I love it.
All of that is to say, I guess on social media, my thing is that I try to help women in their 20s be better with their money so that they don't have to rely on like having a boyfriend that's a financial advisor to teach them all of this stuff, and kind of just teach women that there's more to life than just working your job up until the day that you die and kind of never getting ahead with your money. There is a way to allow money to give you more option, more flexibility, more control back in your life.
Exactly. And honestly, that's why I say like you're a guru mastermind with it, because you yourself are in your 20s. You were almost 25 and you started this journey at how old? 23? Like 2 years ago?
So I started doing social media when I was 22, but I
Okay.
started learning about personal finance when I was 20. And I will say the age thing, definitely, I get a lot of comments on my videos or on the podcast, people saying, I wish I started earlier, or you really have your shit together for only being 24. And yes, and I hope that's inspiring, but I also think that's kind of a double-edged sword where people think that since they're already older than I am, that they miss the boat and now they don't have time to kind of catch up and get their money right.
Right.
So I do think that kind of like the age thing plays both sides. Hopefully I just try to like inspire people that I'm only a couple steps ahead of you. Like I was where you were only a couple years ago, and I completely changed things around for myself, and you too. So I think it's inspiring for people to see another girl in their young 20s that's like, okay, if she can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, it's that relatability factor. And you and I, like, we've spoken about that before, that, you know, we are on this journey for a reason, and we've experienced what we've experienced and what we've learned, like all that you've learned throughout finance, all that I've learned throughout the health and wellness aspect. And now I feel like we are really doing what God wants us to do, and that is to help and inspire and motivate others. So honestly, if you think about it, we're doing God's work, but no, we're just doing what we're here to do. So that's what I love. And I mean, I just love your videos and your content. And it's like, I don't want to say it's strict, but like the way that you have the budget templates up, let's say, you know, the way that you budget out what, you know, you want to save, what you have for expenses, for bills, for all that kind of stuff. It's all user friendly. It makes sense. And the only reason I think is because you yourself are a 23-year-old at the time of making it, 22 or 23 when you made the budget template?
22. And I will say with that, even that is like where I'm getting at with the template, is that I want it to be user friendly and simple. And I never set out to like start social media and make a budget template and be the budgeting girl, because like I said in my story, like it didn't start with me being a budgeting girl or me being a frugal girl and me being like, okay, I'm going to get on social media and talk about how frugal I am. Budgeting was kind of a means to an end, because, you know, when I was in college, I was making a decent amount of money for a college student because I had so many different jobs and like internships and things.
Yeah.
But budgeting was a means to an end, in that I knew I wasn't going to have any money left over to save and invest if I was blowing all of my money and I didn't know where my money was going. So I sort of learned to budget and learn that financial discipline because I had the overarching financial goal of wanting to save and invest a lot of money very early on in my life. So when I started on social media, I mean, if you look back to, which please don't, I like cringe at my early video.
We all got to start from somewhere, girl.
Oh my God. Yeah. But if you look back to all of my early videos, I didn't talk about budgeting really at all for the first like 3 or 4 months of me starting on social media. I started talking about investing. Most of my videos were all about investing and how I was investing as a 21-year-old, as a post-grad, like all of these things. And then about 4 or 5 months into being on TikTok, I started posting my what I spend in a week videos. And through that, people were asking me more questions about budgeting. So I started showing like my whole process for how I budgeted. And through that, I would show my budget spreadsheet. And at the time, it was literally this like blank Excel spreadsheet, because that's literally what I used. That's what I used for the first 2 years of me trying to become more disciplined with my finances, was just a blank Excel spreadsheet. And people started asking for it. And I was like, I mean, sure, I could like put this in my stand store if you really want it, but it's blank. Like it's not cute at all. So for the rest of that calendar year, I had my blank Excel spreadsheet up on my stand store for like $2. I didn't want to make it free, but it was literally $2 because it was nothing special at all. And then it was like becoming kind of popular and people were asking me more questions about budgeting. So I was like, okay, there's something here. So then I took the time to really develop it into kind of what it is today, which honestly is like, I mean, it's slightly more functional, but it's a lot more aesthetic, and that's what helps it sell. So, I mean, I think at this point, definitely over 20,000 people have downloaded it, which is so crazy. People have downloaded it. And it's just because it's something that I personally use. So it's super organic for my content, because I actually every single week I can make a video being like, here, I'm sitting down and like tracking my spending this week, because it's the template I actually use.
But I mean, like, you know, going back to what I said, you are just so relatable. And that's what people on social media are looking for. You know, they're looking for people and creators that they can relate to, essentially. So, I mean, you nailed it with that for sure. But we've talked about before, you juggle so many different hats. You wear so many different hats. And I can relate to you on that because that's how I feel. And especially more recently, guys, when you go and check out Erin's social media, you will see that she is hosting so many events in Pittsburgh. And it's so cool though, like, you know, getting that community together. I'm sure it's been a wild ride so far with learning the ins and outs of it, but juggling, posting, you know, consistently. If you have meetings with people who want to talk about budgeting and how to get started, you have your own podcast, which I didn't mention yet. Guys, Erin and her friend Grace have a podcast, Girls Who Talk Money podcast. So that'll be in the show notes too. But so you wear all these hats, you have all these platforms. How do you juggle it all? Because I'm struggling with what I have right now.
Yeah, it's a lot. I feel like I've been putting a lot of pressure on myself the last couple of months to kind of have everything figured out in that aspect. And the short answer is that I don't, but I am learning a lot through the process. And I will say I've just been sort of taking the approach that I'm letting my audience tell me what they want and what I should focus on next. So just like I said with the budget template, I didn't seek out becoming the budgeting girl on social media.
Right.
I let my audience kind of tell me that that's what they wanted. And through that, I developed like kind of the one and only product that let me quit my full-time job.
Yeah.
And with the events, it kind of happened the same way. So in the fall, I started posting a lot more because again, like I'm a finance girl. I'm not like a lifestyle influencer. I don't really do that sort of thing. I don't post that much about my life. But in the fall, I was starting to post more on my Instagram about being from Pittsburgh. And I started to notice in my analytics that a lot of my following base was based in Pittsburgh. It's like the top city in my analytics right now. And then I also noticed that I was starting to get a lot of DMs from women in their early 20s asking me to meet up for like coffee and things like that because they also live in Pittsburgh and they saw that I lived in Pittsburgh. And so I posted on my Instagram story back in November that I was starting to get a lot of DMs and I said, would anyone be interested if I had like a little meetup? And in my head, I'm thinking maybe 10, 15 girls will respond and it'll be like a small little meetup. We can like go to a bar and hang out, right? Well, literally 80 girls responded to that DM. I didn't even have it as like a form. I just said like reply and let me know. And 80 girls responded and said that. So I put them all into an Instagram group chat, which took me so long. And I was like, okay, so I got a lot more requests than I thought. So I'm going to have to do some planning on like what we could possibly do with 80 girls. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, this might be more like an event than a meetup, but I still didn't really know the scale of it. I was like, we could still just go to a bar. It was around the holidays. We could do like a holiday pop-up bar.
Right.
Like that. So I started to plan it and then I posted it again on my Instagram story a second time about 2 weeks later and another like 100 girls responded. I'm like, where are all these people coming from?
And you're like, oh shit. Like, what did I get myself into?
I know. And honestly, I mean, I like this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was the president of my sorority. I like throwing events. Like it's totally up my alley. But
thank God you have that like background in it. Like if that was me, I'd be like, y'all want to come over? We can order pizza. I don't know.
Yeah. So the first one that I did, I threw a holiday event and I just booked a venue. It was the second floor of a bar downtown and we just like played Christmas music. There was a little photo booth. We did a Secret Santa. It was so fun. There were girls there, which was such a big turnout for me for my first one.
Yeah.
Super excited about that. And then right after, everyone was saying that they had a really good time and they were wondering what my next one was going to be. And I'm like totally a go big or go home person. I'm starting to realize that. And it's like, it's good and it's bad because I also like do things like way over the top when I maybe shouldn't. I don't know. But I was like, okay, Galentine's Day. I want to throw a big event for Galentine's Day. And mind you, that's only a month and a half after Christmas. I didn't have like a ton of turnaround time for this, but I was like, yep, like first week of January, I'm going to start planning Galentine's Day. I was like, I am envisioning a yoga class and a brunch. And I was like, and there's going to be vendors there. Like I was really just like thinking this in my head and kind of just put it out there before I even had it planned. It just like all came together. I don't know. So long story short, Galentine's Day, 140 girls were there.
Amazing.
I booked this humongous venue at the West End downtown. We did a yoga class. So I got a yoga instructor to come into the ballroom. We did a yoga class with literally 140 girls. There were a bunch of vendors there selling clothes, jewelry, a ton of different things. There was a photo booth. I had brands sponsor like goodie bag items. It was really big for my second one. So it's just been fun. But again, it's just down to like letting my audience know or tell me what they're interested in and what they want to see from me and kind of going from there, which is kind of how I've been like approaching my business this year.
That's, I mean, it's so freaking cool. Like you see, it's cool. I'm kind of fangirling, I'm not gonna lie, because it's like I'm talking to you, like you and I, like we're friends. This is so cool. Like I really, really love how you started from something that, you know, was kind of foreign to you, the whole finance and saving, and you're like, huh? Like I thought I was working till 65, but like you've turned it into this passion and your brand, like the Erin Comfortini brand of you, of who you are and what your beliefs are and what all of that kind of stuff. And it's just so cool. And it's like, you know, you and I have talked about it before with like manifestation and, you know, what we see for ourselves and what it is that we want to achieve and having these big goals. Like I can't stand it when people are like, you're dreaming, you like your head's in the clouds, like you're a big dreamer. And it's like, no, like I could dream bigger, honestly, you know? And it's like, if you don't have those dreams and those aspirations, do you really think you're gonna get to them? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that?
I definitely think the biggest benefit that I've gotten from being on social media this year is the network that I've built and the friends that I've made that are all way more successful than me, because it's really opened my eyes. Just like my ex-boyfriend who told me he was going to retire at 40, and that kind of like expanded my mind and like showed me what was possible, because all of a sudden I was introduced to, through the podcast that I was listening to and everything like that, I was introduced to all of these people who were doing really amazing and really inspiring things with their money. Well, then I got onto social media, and that was my mission, was to preach that. But through that, I also developed a really awesome network of people who are so mega successful, things that I did not know were possible for people at such a young age. And that expands my mind into being like, I can be a business owner. I can start multiple businesses in the next 10 years. I can do all of these really amazing things and make a lot of money in the process. It just kind of expands your mind and shows you what's possible. And for a lot of people, I don't think that their in-person circle really allows that, because for me, that was the case. I grew up in a middle-class family. My parents have very traditional jobs. I go to college with people who are all studying to be nurses, engineers, like very typical jobs.
Typical title.
And my mind wasn't able to expand that way. But that's been the biggest benefit for me in starting social media, is just expanding my network and showing me what's possible.
But like, I'm so grateful to have this connection, because like, you know, I'm able to feed ideas off of you and we can talk business. And it's like, even though I'm 2 years older than you, like you and I have those mindsets of, we have much more mature minds, but we're like-minded when it comes to running business and being the entrepreneur. And it's like, it's really important. And that's something that I want to say to my listeners, is that, you know, if you don't like where you are right now and you catch yourself dreaming of bigger and better, of, wanting to maybe kickstart in social media and do influencing or start a business, you have an idea, like it's going to behoove you, which I love that word for some reason, but like it behooves you to surround yourself with a community of people that are like-minded, because you feed off each other, you help motivate and push each other, and you guys have that same drive for success, and you can only go up from there. And I love that. It's that whole female entrepreneur woman boss ass bitch like mindset that I love. And with the people who I've had on the podcast so far, it's just incredible. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, I think we're experiencing such an interesting shift now, because the reason why a lot of people don't think that way in their mind, can't expand, is again because of their circle, and their circle are the people that they're surrounded with growing up. And a lot of those people are your parents and that generation. And when our parents were our age, starting a business was not easy. Starting a business meant like going and opening a storefront and doing something in person, and it was really expensive. You had to take out a business loan. Like, it wasn't feasible for most people. And now that's not what starting a business looks like. It's so different with like the global economy and freelancing, contract work. The gig economy is bigger than it has ever been. More people are starting to do contract work than literally ever. For very traditional roles too, if you're a project manager or something like that, you can go get contract work outside of your full-time job. So it's never been easier to start a business and start earning money outside of your full-time job or your full-time thing. So you can have multiple sources of income. And I think that's kind of a double-edged sword, because everyone talks about the economy and they're saying, well, everything's expensive right now. And it's so much more expensive for our generation to go buy a house, and, all of the line items in our budget are more expensive. But at the same time, we do have more opportunities than we did when things weren't as expensive. So it's kind of like whatever angle you choose to look at it from. You can either say, well, everything's expensive, so I'm never going to be able to afford anything. Or you can say, yes, everything's expensive, but I have a lot more control over how much I make and what I'm doing to earn additional money. So you can kind of play it both ways.
And then it's also like, some people might not have the opportunity. Like for me, for example, when I left my construction job and I put my 2 weeks and went to Greece for 6 weeks, and I didn't have a backup plan of what I was going to do for work. I'm fortunate enough that I still live at home, have my parents' support, and I totally get it. There's people out there who don't have those opportunities or are that fortunate to have like that support in the background to be able to take the leap of faith into being a business owner or trying the whole road of entrepreneurship. But it's kind of like, and it's going to sound corny, but like where there's a will, there's a way, So if you believe in yourself, you can push yourself and get to where it is that you want to get to,
Yeah. And it definitely doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing either. I was doing what I was doing on social media for a year, almost 2 full years, while still having a full-time job. So it definitely also doesn't have to be like, well, if I want to start being an entrepreneur, if I want to start earning like any additional income, I have to quit my full-time job to give myself the capacity for that. I'm reading a book right now called The Originals, and it talks about some of like the world's greatest original ideas and how they came to be, and the people who have started the best businesses. It's a really interesting book, but they talk about how a lot of the best entrepreneurs start their businesses while they still have security from a full-time job. And it's because you're taking such a massive risk on one end of the spectrum that you need security in another aspect. You can't, like, your mind doesn't give you the capacity to think freely and openly while you're stressed about your finances. So it doesn't have to be kind of an all or nothing. You definitely can do both and then take the calculated risk to take it full time when the time is right.
Yeah, exactly. And for sure it's exhausting. It's a lot of work, but I think it's the most rewarding and the best thing that I've ever done. And I'm sure you feel the same way, because the pros definitely are outweighing the cons. So with being the finance budget guru, which I have now given you So, Erin Comfortini, the finance budget guru, with everything that you're doing, and even you said it, this was something that you didn't really explore until it was later. And, it was because of your ex that brought it to your attention and was like, hey, I'm done at 40. With all that you're doing and with stepping more into the finance and the budget world, hosting events and building your social media presence and who you are as a brand, how do you feel and how have you been able to stay true to who you are and to who Erin is?
Yeah, I think that's something that I've been kind of thinking a lot about recently, just because, like I said, when you're going into business, especially when you're doing something that really requires a lot of validation from people, you're kind of building your career off of other people's opinions on you when you're doing social media.
Yeah.
So you kind of lose that a little bit because you are building the products, building the services, building the content around what other people like to see. But it is really easy to lose sight of who you are and what you truly want to talk about when you're doing that. So for example, when I first started on social media, I was talking a lot about investing and building wealth and all of those things because that's truly what interests me. But somehow I ended up being the budgeting girl. And all of a sudden,
budget
2 years
guru.
later,
budget guru, please. Thank you.
So yeah, all of a sudden 2 years later, people know me for budgeting. And I'm like, okay, how sustainable is that for me? Because the goal in my life is not to live on a budget. The goal in my life is not to be frugal. The goal in my life is to build wealth for myself so that I have total control over how my life goes from here. I have total optionality over when I work, what I do for work. The businesses that I want to start, that's what I'm working towards. And somehow my content has morphed into being the budgeting girl. So the people that are attracted to my content are the people that are trying to really restrict and decrease their expenses and not kind of like get into that abundance mindset. It's more so, and that's fine because it's all like different stages of your personal finance journey.
Right.
Once upon a I was definitely in that stage too of trying to restrict and trying to decrease my expenses and all of that. But it all came from a place of I want to have money left over at the end of the month to invest so I can build wealth and I can really create like the best possible life for myself. So you do kind of get into an aspect of maybe not being true to who you are and your authentic self and your authentic desires not coming through in your content because you are trying to, I don't want to use the term people please, but you are trying to give your audience what they want because they're your customer. And that's how you build a sustainable business is by giving your customers what they want to see and what they want to purchase from you.
Yeah. And that makes sense. But I feel like you've still been able, like, no matter what the comments have been, like, I've seen some of your posts where, people are like, oh, you're a budget person, but you're sitting here saying, like, you spend all this and kind of stuff. And it's like you just have to block out those people. But going back to what you're saying is that, you kind of have to morph into what it is that your followers want. I still feel like you've been able to stay true to who you are and what your beliefs are.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say that was a big reason why we started the podcast because my podcast co-host Grace was sort of feeling the same way. Getting into social media in such a defined niche doesn't really allow you to expand and grow because it's really hard inside of a niche like personal finance to build a community that wants to grow with you. It's really challenging to do that because once you go to the next stage of your personal finance journey, it's really hard to get your audience to make that jump with you because a lot of them aren't ready to make that jump. They're still trying to decrease their expenses. They're still trying to budget. And we were really struggling with that. So we said, why don't we give our community a place to go to still learn those concepts, to still talk about budgeting, all of those things inside of a podcast. So it really frees up a lot of room in our personal brands to speak freely and kind of speak true to who we are in the stage of our personal finance journey and just the stage of our life that we're currently in.
Yeah. And I love that. And then it's also like you both are real life examples of, just like we said earlier in the episode, that, I started where you were. I was at that point to where I had to penny pinch and, have a strict budget, but look at where I am now because of all of that. And I feel like I say this every episode. I really don't understand how I'm always able to tie it back to my story. But no matter what the topic is, I'm always able to. It's so funny. But like how I've said for going down the holistic health journey, people are so used to traditional medicine to where it's like you take a pill and it's supposed to be a quick fix. But when you go down a holistic health journey path, it's not a quick fix. And I've said it, I will continue to say it. It is not for the weak. You have to stay disciplined and you have to keep your belief in it that it will eventually work, because it took a year for me to get better. I was seeing small improvements along the way, but I wasn't fully healed until a year later. And there were, ups and downs throughout the journey. So I think people get too caught up and too greedy in the wanting the quick fix and the overnight difference. But a lot of people, guys, gotta like sit back and realize that, I'm speaking normally. I don't have tremors. You've got more financial freedom and you've grown so much. But it's like we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to where we are today. And that's what people need to understand, is that we've been through that rocky journey.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think that going back to kind of the personal finance stuff too, that's so prevalent in the investing world because people really want a quick fix when it comes to investing. They see investing as, oh, well, you invest in stocks because you want to become wealthy. And it's like, yes, you do, but you do it because you want to become wealthy over the long term, and getting people to see like, okay, well, what's the point of investing my money? If I get them to understand like, okay, you can do it sooner than that, but it's not going to be as soon as, like, I've been investing very, very heavily for the last 6 years. Since I was 19 years old and now I'm almost 25, I've been investing very heavily. And yes, I've built a good investment portfolio for myself, but that money is not doing me anything. Current day Erin is not getting anything from that investment portfolio because the money is sitting there, and I know that in the future it's going to be there for me, but I can't touch it right now. I could, but then that completely defeats the purpose. So it's really hard to get people to understand, like, you're putting in a lot of upfront work and you're not going to see anything for it until very later on in life, but the returns will be massive.
Yeah. And it's so funny I mean, it makes sense with what we're talking about, but like, I just think back to, I don't know if you remember the trend on social media around like Halloween where it's the parents of little kids and they put like a bowl of chocolate or a chocolate in front of them and they have them being recorded and they walk out of the room and say like, if you don't touch this and you don't eat any of them, then you can have one when I come back. Like, I'm going to go to the bathroom and I'll be back. And it's like the little kid's sitting there and it's like, oh, but I want to touch it, but like, I can't. And you guys got to understand that in the long run, it will be worth it. No matter if it's your finance journey, if it's your health journey, your wellness journey, like, trust me, it will be worth it in the end. Just hold on to it. Just hold on. Yeah, I don't know why, but that just like came to me. So amazing. I've loved this conversation that we've had. You are the budget guru, and you're welcome because I have given you that name. That's it. Like, is Erin Comforting Budget Guru. But thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I've loved getting to know you over the last almost year, and it's just been such a treat. And I love having somebody who's like-minded and will push me to be better and have that same entrepreneurial mindset like we were talking about. So thank you personally from me. But I do have one last question so that you can be indicted into the True Crew officially.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I think.
Do you accept the challenge, Erin Comfortini?
What challenge?
The question I'm about to ask you.
Maybe. I think.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
You know, I think that this is going to be kind of a lame answer. But I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I was talking about in one of my videos how I've like fallen out of the habit of being a morning person, and I've just really loved laying in bed until literally 7. Yeah. And I used to be like in college, I used to be a 5 a.m. like, then it turned to 6 and I was 6 a.m. for the longest time. And then something this winter just happened and I started sleeping in. And I wish that I could like lay in bed for as long as possible. And then when I get up, it's still 5 p.m. in the morning. Imagine how much more time we would have in our day.
Listen, if we could just stop time, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Like, I would get so much done.
Yeah, if I get up at 9 p.m. and then I get out of bed and it's 5, like I would be Superwoman.
So you want to be father time, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pause time.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a new one. You know,
I'm sure everyone says like they want to be able to fly or like teleport, which would also be equally as cool for sure.
Yeah,
but
like mine's I want to fly. I want to be able to fly. I feel like it'd be cool, you know?
Yeah, or teleport for me. I don't really care to fly, but if I could teleport, that would also be cool.
Oh my gosh, that would be so much easier.
Yeah, like with my luggage, like not just me.
Yeah,
with my
right?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the True Crew officially, now that you've answered that question. But Erin, thank you again. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Guys, like I said, I'm going to have all of Erin's socials in the show notes in the description. Make sure to go follow her on social media. Go follow the podcast. Girls Who Talk Money podcast is super helpful, very educational, and make sure you go to her stand store and buy the budget template and download it because that is insanely helpful as well. I'm not gonna lie, I've fallen off of being good on it, but I'm determined to get back to it because
you can get back. It's fine.
You can get back whenever, but like, you know, don't just keep talking about it, just start. And that's what I gotta do. Just start. I gotta take my own advice. But that's all I have for you guys this week on the True Talk podcast. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for more to come.
Thanks for listening to the True Talk podcast. Make sure to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and stay tuned for more to come.